At a family dinner, my girlfriend smiled sweetly at me and said, "Either pay for my brother's college, or we're done. That's the bare minimum a real man does." Her parents nodded in agreement. I didn't argue. I just smiled and left without a word. 2 weeks later, she finally learned where that money really went, and it wasn't toward her brother. You can learn a lot about a person by the way they look at you when they think you owe them something. It is a look of pure, unearned confidence. A look that says, "This is mine, you just happen to be holding it for me." I saw that look last night. I saw it on the face of the woman I loved and on the faces of her parents. And in that one silent moment, I understood everything. My name is Liam. I own a custom woodworking business. I take old reclaimed wood and turn it into furniture. It is a quiet living, but a good one. I build things that last, things with character and strength. I thought my relationship with my girlfriend Chloe was the same. We had been together for 4 years. We were partners. We kept our finances separate, but worked toward shared goals. I respected her drive, her ambition. I was not a meal ticket. I was her teammate. At least that was the story I was living. Her family was always part of the package. Her father, Robert, a man who measured his worth by the value of his stock portfolio. Her mother, Carol, who believed her daughter was destined for a life of luxury. And her younger brother, Leo, a 19-year-old kid who had never worked a day in his life and saw the world as his personal playground. They were polite to me, but there was always an undercurrent of evaluation, as if they were constantly running a credit check on my character. There is something else you need to know. My life is not just about me. I have a younger sister, Sarah. A year ago, her husband, my best friend since childhood, passed away after a long, brutal fight with cancer. He left her with 2 beautiful kids and a mountain of medical debt that would make your head spin. Sarah is the strongest person I know. She works 2 jobs, she never complains, and she is fiercely proud. I help where I can, slipping her cash for groceries, covering a utility bill here and there. But she resists any major help. She is determined to make it on her own. Her struggle is a quiet, constant ache in my heart. Last night, we were all at her parents' house for their weekly family dinner. The conversation was the usual mix of Robert's stock tips and Carol's gossip. Then, after the main course, the ambush began. Robert cleared his throat, a signal that a formal announcement was coming. "Liam," he began, "as you know, Leo has been accepted to a very prestigious private university. We are all incredibly proud." I nodded and congratulated Leo, who just shrugged and kept looking at his phone. Then Chloe turned to me. She placed her hand on my arm, her smile perfectly sweet, her eyes perfectly cold. "We have been talking," she said, gesturing to her parents, "and we have realized that this is a perfect opportunity for you to show your commitment to this family." I knew where this was going. I could feel the floor falling out from under me. She continued, her voice light and casual, as if she were asking me to pass the salt. "We want you to pay for Leo's tuition, the first year at least." I just stared at her. The cost of a single year at that university was more than the down payment on my first house. She saw the look on my face and her smile tightened. The sweetness vanished, replaced by a hard, unyielding edge. "Either pay for my brother's college or we are done," she said, her voice low and firm. "That is the bare minimum a real man does for the family he's going to marry into." I looked at her parents. Robert and Carol were both nodding in agreement, their faces set with the same look of righteous expectation. They had discussed this. They had planned this. This was not a request. It was an ultimatum. A shakedown. In that moment, everything became crystal clear. My worth to them was not in my love for their daughter, my character, or my hard work. It was in my bank account. I was not a future son-in-law. I was a resource to be tapped. I did not argue. I did not raise my voice. I did not defend myself. I looked at each of them, at their confident, entitled faces. I saw my entire future with this woman laid out before me. A future of endless expectations, of constantly having to prove my worth through financial transactions. And then I thought of my sister. I thought of her getting up at 5 in the morning to work a shift before getting her kids ready for school. I thought of her trying to figure out which bill she could skip this month to afford a new pair of shoes for her son. The contrast between her quiet struggle and their loud, greedy demands was so stark it almost made me laugh. I stood up from the table. I placed my napkin neatly beside my plate. I smiled, a real, genuine smile, and I walked out of the dining room without saying a single word. I heard Chloe call my name, first in confusion, then in anger. I did not stop. I walked out the front door, got in my truck, and drove away. I did not know exactly what my plan was yet, but I knew one thing for certain. My money was going to support a family. It just was not going to be hers. Update 1. It has been 1 week since I walked out of that dinner. A week of absolute silence from me, and a week of escalating hysteria from them. Thank you for the messages of support. It is good to know that the world is not entirely populated by people who see relationships as a business transaction. The night I drove away, I did not go home. I drove straight to my sister Sarah's house. It was late, but she was still up, sitting at her kitchen table surrounded by a sea of paperwork. Bills, insurance forms, letters from debt collectors. She was trying to make sense of an impossible situation. When she saw me, she tried to put on a brave face, but I could see the exhaustion in her eyes. The weight of the world was on her shoulders. We did not talk much that night. I just made her a cup of tea and sat with her while she worked. I watched her kids sleeping, their faces peaceful and innocent, completely unaware of the storm their mother was weathering for them. I left before the sun came up. My resolve hardened into something unbreakable. The first thing I did the next morning was go to my bank. I have been saving for years, building an investment portfolio. It was my future fund, the money I had set aside for a house, for a family, for a life with Chloe. I liquidated the entire thing. It was a significant sum, enough to change a life, and that is exactly what I intended to do. Meanwhile, the messages from Chloe and her family started pouring in. At first, they were angry and confused. From Chloe, "What was that last night? You just walked out? You are being so childish. Call me." From Robert, "Liam, I am very disappointed in your behavior. You embarrassed my daughter and disrespected my family. We expect an apology." I did not reply. I spent the day with my financial advisor and a lawyer, setting up a trust for my sister's children. By day 3, their tone had shifted to a kind of confused bargaining. From Chloe, "Okay, I get it. You were surprised. We should have talked about it first, but it is a good investment in our future. My parents will respect you for it." From Carol, "Liam, Chloe is very upset. You know how much her brother means to her. A real man provides for his family." The constant repetition of that phrase, "a real man," was starting to get under my skin. They had a very specific and very expensive definition of what that meant. I continued to ignore them. I packed up every single thing Chloe owned that was at my house. She had not officially moved in, but she had accumulated a lot of stuff. I boxed it all up, labeled it, and put it in my workshop for safekeeping. I changed the passcodes on my home security system. Then, I went back to my sister's house. I did not tell her what I was about to do. I just told her I needed her to sign some papers for a family investment fund I was setting up for the kids. She was hesitant, always wary of charity, but I framed it as a legal thing to protect their future. She signed them. The next day, 2 things happened. First, a check from the trust was delivered to the hospital that held the majority of her late husband's medical debt. The check paid off the entire balance, every last penny. Second, another check was delivered to the bank that held her mortgage. It paid off the entire remaining balance on her house. Sarah called me, her voice choked with tears. She could not speak at first. She just kept saying, "Liam, what did you do?" I told her I had just made a sound investment in the only family that mattered to me. I told her that her husband would have wanted her to be free, to be able to raise their kids without that crushing weight on her shoulders. For the first time in a year, I heard her really, truly laugh. It was the best sound in the world. That same afternoon, I finally responded to Chloe. She had been sending me messages all day, each one more desperate than the last. Her brother's tuition deposit was due at the end of the week. My response was a single email, sent to her, her brother, and her parents. The subject line was, "A real man." The body of the email was simple. "You are correct. A real man provides for his family. He supports them, protects them, and invests in their future. That is why my savings, the money you demanded for Leo's education, has been used to pay off the medical debt and the mortgage for my widowed sister and her 2 children. I consider this the bare minimum. Our relationship is over. A courier will be delivering Chloe's belongings to your house tomorrow. I attached 2 documents to the email. The first was a copy of the paid-in-full statement from the hospital. The second was a copy of the paid-in-full statement from the mortgage company. I hit send. Then I blocked their numbers on my phone and their email addresses. The silence that followed was a relief. I knew the storm was not over, but I had redirected it. I had taken their greed, their entitlement, their ugly ultimatum, and I had transformed it into something good. Something real. Let them rage. I had a family to take care of. Update 2. It has been 2 weeks since I sent that email. The silence from my end has remained unbroken, but the shockwaves from my decision have spread in ways I never could have predicted. I have not spoken to Chloe or her family, but the story has come back to me through multiple sources. The first thing that happened was an explosion of rage. I heard from a mutual friend that Chloe had a complete meltdown. She called me every name she could think of. She accused me of betraying her, of stealing her money. Her father, Robert, apparently tried to call his lawyer, screaming about suing me for emotional distress and for breaking a verbal contract. His lawyer, a man with a functioning brain, must have told him he did not have a case because the legal threats never materialized. Their anger was based on a simple, delusional belief that my money was already theirs. They were not angry because I had helped my sister. They were angry because the bank they had planned to rob had suddenly closed its doors. After the rage came the smear campaign. Chloe and her mother started telling everyone who would listen a twisted version of the story. In their telling, I was an unstable, cruel man who had dangled the promise of a secure future in front of Chloe, only to snatch it away. They claimed I had stolen their family's chance at a better life by giving the money to my sister, who they painted as irresponsible and undeserving. It did not work. And this is where the story gets interesting. My sister Sarah lives in the same town as Chloe's parents. It is not a huge place. People talk. The story of her husband's passing and her subsequent struggles was well known in their community. She is a beloved figure, a woman who has faced tragedy with grace and strength. When the news of my investment in her future became public, and it did, because you cannot pay off that much debt in a small town without people finding out, the reaction was overwhelming. People were touched. Our story, the story of a brother helping his sister in her darkest hour, became the talk of the town. A local newspaper even did a small piece on it, a good news story about family and community. They did not use my name at my request, but they described me as a local businessman. Now imagine you are Robert and Carol. You have spent years building a reputation as pillars of the community. You sit on charity boards, you donate to local causes, you pride yourselves on your image. And then this story comes out. A story about a local man's incredible act of generosity. And at the same time, your daughter is going around town telling everyone that this same man is a monster for not giving that exact money to her lazy, entitled brother instead. The two narratives did not align. People started connecting the dots. The story of the family dinner, of the ultimatum, started to leak out. Chloe's attempts to paint me as the villain backfired spectacularly. She was not just seen as greedy, she was seen as ghoulish. She was the woman who tried to divert a lifeline from a widow and her children to pay for her brother's frat parties. Robert and Carol have been humiliated. Their friends have been avoiding them. Their social standing, the thing they value above all else, has been shattered. They have been exposed as the greedy, entitled people they truly are. Chloe's life has been a train wreck. She is still living with her parents. Her friends, who were all part of the same materialistic world, have distanced themselves from her. The scandal is too ugly. She is a social pariah. And Leo, the brother at the center of all this? He did not get to go to his prestigious private university. He is attending the local community college. I have heard that his parents are making him get a part-time job to pay for his own books. It seems they have finally decided to teach him the value of $1, now that their access to mine has been permanently cut off. I saw Chloe once about a week ago. I was at the grocery store. She was in the checkout line a few lanes over. She looked smaller, diminished. The confidence was gone. She saw me and for a second our eyes met. I did not feel anger. I did not feel pity. I felt nothing at all. She was just a stranger, a ghost from a life I no longer lived. She looked away first. The best part of this whole thing is my sister. The change in her is like night and day. With the financial weight gone, she is lighter, happier. She has been able to quit one of her jobs and spend more time with her kids. The dark circles under her eyes are gone. She smiles more. My investment did not just pay off her debt. It gave her back her life. It gave my niece and nephew back their mother. That is what a real man does. He does not pay for entitlement. He does not fund arrogance. He builds things that last. He protects the people he loves. He invests in a future that is built on something real. My future is with my family, the one that is bound by love and loyalty, not by invoices and expectations, and that is a foundation that can never be broken. Final update. It has been 6 months since I walked out on that family and their outrageous demands. The dust has settled, and the new world I have built for myself is quiet, strong, and completely my own. I wanted to share this final update because the story has reached a conclusion that is more complete and satisfying than I ever could have engineered. My life is good. My business is thriving. I spend my weekends helping my sister with projects around her house, the house that is now truly hers, and playing with my niece and nephew. Seeing them happy and secure, without the shadow of debt hanging over their future, is the greatest return on investment I could ever ask for. Sarah is doing incredibly well. She has even started dating again, a good man who adores her and her kids. The transformation in her life has been the true victory in all of this. As for Chloe and her family, their story is a quiet tragedy of their own making. The social humiliation they suffered was not a passing storm. It was a permanent change in their climate. Robert and Carol have become recluses. Their reputation in the community was so important to them, and its loss has been a blow from which they have not recovered. They no longer host parties. They are no longer on the boards of charities. They have been exposed, and their world has shrunk as a result. Leo, the would-be Ivy Leaguer, is still at community college. I have heard through the grapevine that he is struggling. He has never had to work for anything in his life, and the reality of responsibility has been a shock to his system. He is learning a hard lesson, one that his parents should have taught him years ago. And Chloe, her story is the one that has come full circle. After months of unemployment and social isolation, she finally sent me an email. It was not a demand or an apology. It was a plea. She wrote that she had been doing a lot of thinking, that she had been in therapy. She said she finally understood how wrong she had been, how her family's values had twisted her own. She wrote that she was not asking for a second chance, but for a conversation. She wanted to understand how she had become the person who could do what she did. I thought about it for a long time. The old me, the man who always wanted to fix things, would have agreed to meet. But I am not that man anymore. I have learned that some things are too broken to be repaired. And more importantly, I have learned that I am not responsible for fixing her. I did not reply to her email. I just deleted it. Her journey of self-discovery is her own. I am no longer a part of her story. The final, perfect end to this chapter came last week. I received a letter in the mail. It was from a local scholarship fund that helps children who have lost a parent. The letter was a thank you. It said that an anonymous donation had been made in my sister's late husband's name. A donation large enough to fund a full scholarship for one student each year for the next decade. The letter stated that the donation had been made by a local family who wished to honor the spirit of true family support in the community. I called my sister, and she had no idea what I was talking about. It was not her. Then it hit me. It was Robert and Carol. It was their desperate, public attempt to buy back their reputation. A pathetic, transparent effort to rehab their image by throwing money at the very cause my actions had championed. I did not feel anger. I just felt a quiet sense of victory. My one simple act of walking away from that dinner had not just saved myself. It had not just saved my sister. It had forced a family of takers to finally give something back. They had tried to extort me, to use my money to fund their entitled dreams. And in the end, they were the ones writing the check, funding the future of a deserving child, all in a desperate attempt to look like the very thing they are not. a real family. My revenge was never about destroying them. It was about building something better. And in the end, the ripples of my one decision have done more good than I ever could have imagined. They wanted me to pay for a bare minimum. Instead, I raised the standard. And they are the ones who are now finally trying to meet it.